These are the generation, there we go, 7 reasons our generation has given up on the church. Do it. All right, there we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Well, and welcome to the Great Friday at the Faith Place. Give some claps, give some claps. We got our youth panelists up here tonight. They're going to give us talk on the 7 reasons our generation has given up on the church. All right. I'm going to introduce each panelist tonight. We got the moderator, Clarice Goodman. We got Michaela Hudson, Jennifer Fair, Karen Odom, and Victoria Giles. And this is our panelists for tonight. They're going to come up here and they're going to give us our youth talk tonight on why the youth generation has given up on the church. So y'all come on in, have a seat, enjoy. How do y'all want to do this?
All right, we can take over now?
Y'all want to take over?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sounds good to me. Thank you everybody for being here to listen to our discussion. You could have been anywhere else, but you decided to be here. Yeah. And we appreciate that. For everybody joining us online, we appreciate you because, again, you could be surfing the web on like YouTube or Facebook or, Instagram and stuff. But you're watching us, and again, we appreciate that. So we talked about a lot of different things, 7 reasons why young people have given up on church. I'll start by just giving the overall reasons, and then we kind of will go from there and break down the details. So 1 is judgment, 2 is messages, and there were a lot of different factors kind of went into that we'll talk about. No safe spaces, hypocrisy. I know, right? Virtual worship. I guess generational gaps with older youth leaders, and then just an overall old school mentality. As I said, messages was a big one, so we will jump into that. One big thing was catered messages. I'll start by saying someone mentioned that older preachers typically kind of preach to the older generation. So I will open it up to my fellow panelists if anybody would like to jump in and just give their feedback on that.
I can start. Thank you, Pastor Razor and the Faith Place for having us. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to better our church. As an educator and a parent, I've realized that a lot of young people, when they come to church, they are bored because they don't understand what the pastor is talking about. There are not a lot of activities for young people, so they feel forced. And it's very similar to if you're in a room where people are speaking a foreign language. You don't understand what's happening. You feel lost, you feel forgotten about, and that's a lot of times how the youth have expressed that they feel that the pastor is talking over their head. They don't understand what's happening. They don't know about these stories that are in the Bible. So we're here just to let you all know what we've gathered that the youth have talked about as to why they don't really want to come to church. But we're also here to come to a resolution. If the youth are feeling like when the pastor is speaking or they're in Bible study, they don't understand what's happening, we have to figure out a way to ensure that the youth understand, because Jesus encouraged us to suffer the little children. He didn't forget about them. So we can't forget about them either. And I strongly encourage parents to put their children in Sunday school. That's where I learned about the Bible. My teacher met me where I was. I can remember being in kindergarten and being in Sunday school. The lesson was tailored to meet me at 5 years old. And I built on understanding about Christ and the Trinity and the purpose of the church by going to Sunday school. So it's imperative that we remember that those that offer Sunday school and children's church, that we put our children there, because that's where they learn about Christ.
So I'm going to add another angle to that. So even in that, though, you can have a young teen. Let's say his parents didn't grow up in church, or let's say he grew up with a different type of religious or spiritual background, and he's getting interested in or getting curious about wanting to go to church, and he brings himself to church, right? So when he's going there, he's not going to be able to understand or be able to wrap his head around all of the different stories. And it's not just about the Bible itself, but it's also about the application, right? When they're preaching and they're giving real world lessons and real world stories, it's hard for a 16-year-old who is growing up and whatever his background and whatever his household looks like and whatever his environment is when he goes back home. Like, I hear you preaching, I hear what you're saying, but how does that affect me in my real life? Like, how am I supposed to manage all of these other influences that I am seeing on a day-to-day basis? How am I supposed to manage this when I'm around my friends and they're not living like this? How am I supposed to manage my neighborhood when my family is not moving like this? How am I supposed to manage Facebook, social media, Instagram? Like, how am I supposed to manage all of this? And your pastor, who is 65, 70 years old, ain't on Instagram. He doesn't know the battles, right? Like, everybody's experience is different. So your 70-year-old pastor is not going to relate to social media the way I'm relating to social media. Okay, yeah, they may have had gangs back then, but even in the gangs, even when I was younger, when I grew up and they had gangs, there were still rules and regulations. Now it's like a free-for-all, right? So where your pastor was and experienced gangs, it's a slightly different situation that some of these kids are now experiencing because there's different rules in that. So it's not just about going to Sunday school, like, because if you didn't grow up in church, right, you don't have that. So it's like messages also have to speak to them so they can learn real-world application, right? Because I can sit here and you can tell me a story about church all day, but it's no different to some than the stories they read in the book at school. Right. It's just a story. How does that help me in my life?
Yeah, and I can attest to growing up in Sunday school, that's how we were taught. We were taught how to apply the Word of God to our lives. It was really like a small group. You know, you would start off with the lesson, and even if you look at a Sunday school book, the questions that are prompted are geared towards, after you read this lesson, how are you going to apply this? If the teacher follows the Sunday school book, application is there. And even when we're talking about this young person, this theoretical person, you know, small Sunday school is catered from 0 to 100 years old. That's why you have small groups. So I would encourage any church that has it to encourage your members to come, because some people can come to Christ at 85, 15, 29. As a church, we need to have something to offer them where they are. And I know Sunday school was very important to me because it was youth that were like me, that understood at my level, and we could share out, and it was a safe place to do so. And I felt like I grew in Christ because I felt like it wasn't just me. If it was 5 people there, I was there with somebody who could relate to my struggles. And then you had a teacher there to say, well, look, this is my experience. You all are 15, 16, and I may be 35. I've experienced that. This may help you along the way.
Right. And I think the difference is, though, right? So every church is different. And so, like, I grew up in the church, right? And so my grandmother was a Sunday school teacher and things like that. Love my grandma, right? Respected my grandmother, right? However, even though I was in Sunday school with kids my age, I didn't share because I wasn't the traditional churchgoer, right? Like, I was the rebellious kid. I hated skirts. Why I gotta wear skirts every day? Like, who has to do, like, why? Right? And it's just like all of these rules that I didn't go along with. So I was always looked at like, she's that one, right? So I'm not going to share my thoughts. I'm not going to ask my questions. I'm not going to do that because I can already feel that side eye, right?
That judgment.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, I was the one that had to make to go. I had to go Sunday, Wednesday, Friday. Like, they needed me in church all the time, right? And so it's one of those things, like, your age group, it's great, but again, you still need your Sunday school teachers to kind of go out in the world a little bit so they know what we're really dealing with, right?
So I feel like I heard Michaela say something over here, if you want to add. Just want to make sure we get,
when she said, I was there Friday, Tuesday, Sunday, I said, I understand. Thanks. Well, since we on me, I could throw my little how I feel in. I feel like when it comes to messages with older pastors preaching, like everybody said, they just kind of don't know how to gear it towards the youth just so we could listen. And it's not like we're not understanding what you're saying. It's just like those big, I'm telling you, from me and the kids' point, those big words that you going back and forth, and if we don't know the background between it, it's just like in one ear and in one out the other. And there's been times I've been sitting there and Pastor has said, keep it 100, and I'm like, oh. I look up like, what? And then I'm like, okay, well, now I'm listening now. So I feel like if older pastors just even add some of the younger lingo or kind of like compare to a story that happens in the Bible and maybe compare it to a real life situation just to get those youth eyes, to get those ears to listen, it'll be a lot better.
Great point.
I agree with that completely. So definitely with Pastor, like I come for the word, but again, like you said, it has to be broken down to me in a way that I can apply it to like everyday life. I feel like a lot of old preachers, they throw out Bible verses, and that's fine. It's great that you know the Bible, but I feel like if I don't know what you're talking about, then that message is not coming across clearly.
Right.
So.
And they be too aggressive. Like all the time, like God said this, God said that. Like no, take it easy, relax. Like we listening, but it don't take all of that like to draw us in. Like be a little bit more mild with us. You know, y'all get what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's important too where the Bible talks about rightly dividing the word of God. And that's important for administration, the church, the pastor. You're not rightly dividing it if I don't understand. If I'm a teacher, if I'm teaching fractions and nobody in the room gets it, whose fault is it? Mine.
That's right.
So it's important that pastors self-evaluate, look in the crowd and see, do people get it? Is it going over their head? Figure out a way to check and balance to ensure that nobody is left behind. Because Jesus doesn't want anybody to be left behind. That's right. So we have to take on that same mentality.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good point, because I think that kind of plays into the holier than thou identity that some pastors and some clergymen have, is that they are beyond reproach, right? That, oh, well, I'm the pastor, so I know best. And it's like, yeah, but no. And that's everybody is not beyond growth and beyond learning, right? And it's not that you don't know the word. It's not that somebody's challenging you and telling you don't know the word, but you may not be able to reach everybody, and you have to be able to look at yourself and like, okay, what can I do better? What can I work on? Where am I at? And actually have conversations with your youth. Like, don't send brother and sister such and such to go have the conversation and bring it back to you. No, go in fellowship with your youth and actually have real day-to-day conversations. Check in. And like some of these metrics, they're so huge, and I don't want to have to make an appointment with my pastor and my associate pastor, and then this 3 months, like what I needed you to pray for me for 3 months ago. I mean, we passed that at this point.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, we did like break this down to a lot of different things, and I think we covered a lot of them as far as difficult messages and like them being very intimidating when they, speaking to us. Someone mentioned wanting to know more history, and just, I guess, using the Bible to become closer to our ancestry. I'm not sure who it was. I apologize.
That was me.
Yeah, if you wanted to talk a little more about that.
So basically, within the last few years, I think a lot of people have been hearing about how Black folks are getting woke, right? Which is great, right? Hands down, that is a beautiful thing. But a lot of people are starting to disassociate themselves from Christianity because a lot of us may think that Christianity was only introduced to us by slavery. And so that is a natural turnoff. Like, why do I want to associate myself with something that was so heart-wrenching, so horrible for us, right? And not understanding that, no, first of all, we were here before slavery. Number two, that there were some of us that was practicing Christianity prior to coming over here. And so not understanding that, you have literally lost a lot of people just off them being ignorant to that fact. And so if we can preach a holistic ancestry and how Christianity came to be and where we practice and things like that, I think that would close the gap for a lot of us. And they wouldn't be so turned off to Christianity, because that's a lot of people, what people say, like, why y'all preaching to this white man, this white God, and things like that, and they use this to keep us enslaved. It's just like, that's actually not what happened. But, you know what I mean? But the more you know, the more free you become. And I think that would bring a lot of people back into the church.
I agree.
Can I say, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
So I think that it's important that the church not only offer traditional church service and choir singing, you have to offer programs. That's where children are educated. If you go into different zip codes, children learn about themselves not only at home and at church, they see themselves in books and at the YMCA and at the theater. And we are relying on a system that has not been kind to us to educate our children.
All right.
And the church has to be more than just Sunday morning service,
Talk
Wednesday Bible study,
Talk about
and
it.
Tuesday choir rehearsal. I am a parent, and I had to put my child in parochial school to ensure that he got quality education. And those people don't look like him. So I had to fill in the gap. Summers, I was his teacher. I had to teach him about who he was because he wasn't going to learn it anywhere else. So I think it's important that pastors realize that it's our duty as a church to let our people know who they are. Because when you know who you are, you're not willing to take some things.
Right.
When you know that you're related to a king, it's certain things you're not going to allow. So I think it's important that we not only offer sermons, but we have to teach our children, our young people, who they are in Christ, their place in this world, and then we will see better results. And we just can't rely on church only for church service. It has to be programs offered. We can't rely on the world system because God created a kingdom for us. We're supposed to operate and beat to a different drum. We shouldn't be relying on public assistance and public education. They're not going to help us. And pastors may not like it, but that's how we're going to see a different result.
I want to add in. To piggyback off, she said, I believe pastors need to be more engaged with their youth. I remember when I was younger, and I'd be acting out in school, I'd be coming back with bad grades, and my mom would come back and tell pastor, and he'll be like, come take me in this office. I know y'all know the old church with the old office in the back. I go in the office, and there'd be a belt hanging back up there, and he'll just point to the belt. And I'd be like, okay. And so as I'm at school, I had that in the back of my head, like, okay, I have to do better. I have to fix this, or my pastor gonna have a problem with it. Not only my pastor, but my mama gonna have a problem with it. Not only my mama, but my youth leader gonna have a problem with it. So I just feel like they need to be a little bit more engaged with the kids outside of church in their personal lives as well.
Yeah, and one last thing for me, I think you spoke to the holistic approach. I think it's very important that we're not just getting the Bible, but also understanding that we need to be, the ultimate goal is to get to heaven, but as we're here right now, we need to be engaged and be well, which I think is important, and I appreciate Pastor for providing that financial stability programming. Like you said, having programs for people, because yeah, we want to be like Christians, we want to be great people, but we want to live well, we want to be financially stable. We want to be healthy.
Preaching prosperity, you also have
Right,
to
yeah,
put in the work.
exactly. Right, you got to take care of your body, take care of your mind, be mentally well, spiritually well, physically well, all of that. And then with identity as well, I think it's important to tell the truth about where we stood in the Bible as well.
Yeah.
Talk
It's-
about it.
They want to talk about us being slaves our whole lives and things like that, but that's not the truth. And I feel like, again, we hear the Bible, we hear these things, but we need to know where we stood because that's our identity. And we need to know where we came from if we're going to figure out where we're going.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's
you know,
There you go, girl. Go
yeah,
ahead.
look, don't. We're going to move on to the next topic.
One thing
Yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick. When you were talking, Clarice, it made me think of affinity. You felt affiliated with that church, and that's why you felt committed to doing something positive. And I feel like, Michaela, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm like, make sure.
When you feel affiliated with something, you don't want to bring shame to it. And you have to make you feel like they are a part of your ministry. I'm a part of different organizations. When I know I don't look right going outside, I don't put on those clothes so people will know and that I can be represented because I know I'm not at my best. So it's important that you feel affiliated with the ministry, because then they will conduct themselves a certain way in school settings with their friends, because they don't want to bring shame to their church.
I would like to say also, when we talked about how pastors should be more involved in the youth life, I feel like that they also should be mindful of where they were when they were our age. Because I've dealt with that a lot. A lot of people, so when you gonna get married, or what you doing at this right now? Like, you're not at school, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, what were you doing when you were my age? Like, come on now, like, let me remind you. I know you probably, a little older, but let me just let you know, like, because, that it's really not cool. It make you feel like I'm just gonna back off. I'm not gonna come back around because you judging me. Like, I can't do no wrong. I can't do no wrong. I can't say anything without you sizing me up and just like, yeah. So I just feel like be mindful of where you were when you were our age, and just work with us, like, because we're not backing away. We're not backing from the church. Like, we want to learn more. We want to have a relationship with God, but it's just like, meet us, help us. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to help us win our soul over. So just be cool and just, you feel me, take it easy, because like I say, like they be too aggressive, and I don't like that. Like, handle me with care, because I'm easy to like just shut off and just go in my own little corner, and you'll never hear from me again. And then you wondering like, well, what happened to her? Well, exactly. So I just felt the need to say that.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Goes with though, like the wholeness approach. Like, you never know what somebody is going through, right? And it's like they're coming to church for something, right? And the last thing you want to do is turn somebody away, because you don't know, they might go home and hang themselves, and you were the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, you never know what somebody is going through, and it's just like, we already have to deal with the world itself. We already have to deal with the temptation. The last thing you want to do is come to what you think is a safe space, only to be shunned again. And then you're like, well, why are you not coming back? To who?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, if this is supposed to be a safe place, if this is supposed to be the church of God, and it's just like, but you're not acting very godly. And it's horrible. Like, when you look on Facebook and you see some of the nastiest messages, and then you go to their page and it says Christian on it, you be like, it makes you turn like, why is the nastiest people claiming to be Christian? Like,
Claiming.
It's just like, stop it. It's just like, before you open your mouth, just take a moment. Just take a moment.
I do want to invite the people at home. Are we inviting the people here? I don't know if y'all got something to say. Okay, we can do that too. But the people at home, I want to make sure we are engaging people in the conversation. For the people at home, you can call us at 312-798-9352. You can call that number. You'll be on speaker. Everybody can hear your question or your feedback, and we can actively engage with you in that conversation. Again, it is 312-798-9352. I think this
Well, hold on. I got a few questions.
well, step right up to the
I
front
got
then.
like 40 questions, but I'm gonna ask 3 at a time.
40 questions.
So y'all kind of touch base on a few of these questions I got written down, but
I just want to know why you're not on the panel.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
But so I mean, like, I'm gonna give you a scenario. Like, when I was younger, I was a little boy, 12, 13 years old, and I remember when I first started going to church, and I used to, go to church on Sundays and everything. But when I leave and come home, and my friends, they see me with my tie on, they get to talking about me, and I'm one of the popular kids in the neighborhood, so I got to deal with this and the rest of the Sunday or whatever. So I go home and everything. But once I go outside, and I got to hear that, oh, you a little deacon, or you be praying, or you be going to church catching the Holy Ghost, stuff like that, and me having a reputation, I got to be like, man, y'all, like, leave me alone or hush up while I try to find myself being this way one day, then this way the next. So I just want to ask, Do you think your friends have influence on your decision on attending church?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm a parent, and I feel like those children my son go to school with have more influence over him than I do. There are times that I felt that way. But I'm reminded of the scripture where I'm planting the seed. Somebody's going to come and water it, and I expect God to provide the increase. I don't expect him. Some children do come to Christ at 7 years old. Some come at 18. I'm patient, and I know what God has promised me. So I don't just look at what he's doing right now. I remind him of the right thing. I demonstrate it at home. He knows my expectations, but I trust the promises of God, regardless of what he's doing and what the friends. And I remind him who he is. Son, we represent God. We don't do this at home. And I tell him, God has given you free will. When you make those decisions, you are old enough now to understand, and God's going to hold you accountable. And it's not to scare him, but to get him to understand reality.
Yeah.
Because children die at 12, 8, especially in our city. So I take a realistic approach. My child is 14 years old. He'll be turning 15 this summer. You are a young man. What you do, God is watching. He got a tape recorder, don't never go off. And you may forget, but God didn't. And I believe those are seeds that I planted him, and eventually I will see the fruit of that. But I don't just expect him to just change overnight. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you. Sorry. I think my friends, I don't think they influence me, but I would say I'm very particular about the people I hang around. And so when I tell people I'm going to church, they respect that.
Good.
Like there was no like joking things like that. I tell people now, like if I go out on Saturday night, I gotta go to church in the morning, y'all. I ain't about to be out with y'all till 4 o'clock in the morning like I used to be. But you know, I think
And that's real.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
real.
But I think the older I got, when I said I think that I influenced them a little more.
Good.
Because I think when I'm saying like I'm going to church, like I don't have to say it. I think people sometimes know. I think just in the way you carry yourself, I think like people see when you've been blessed. And so if I say I'm going to church, they're like, oh, yeah. And like a lot of my friends be like, you know, I need to get back to church. They ain't did it yet. But they like, I need to get back to church. Like I need to, you know, I like that. I want to like, they probably like, I can't go there yet, but like I want to listen to a service or something like that. And I encourage that. So again, for me, it's like I am who I am, like I'm not gonna front it, but I was just very particular about the people I hung around. And so yeah, they influenced me, but I think to some extent I did more influencing than them.
And then I think like you just have to even yes, we're in church and yes, we're talking about church, but you also just have to teach children how to stand firm in whatever it is that they believe, right? You are an individual. You don't allow somebody else's opinions, commentary to make you sidestep, right? And so like I have children and I tell my daughter quick, I'm like, I don't really rock with your friend. I don't like how she always, you know, like I have opinions, right? And so like, again, I grew up in a church and may have prayed at home. I'm like, I'm not really going back to church, right? But I have a friend, she there every Sunday, she's singing the choir, and sometimes I go, sometimes I don't, right? And she understands the journey and the path that I'm struggling with, and it doesn't take away from her journey. Right. She's at church faithfully. Yeah. And me and her, we still have conversations, but that doesn't make my journey any different. It doesn't make hers. It doesn't take anything away from anybody. You have to teach your children, like, kids are gonna tease you regardless of what you do anyway. So don't change what you're doing to suit them. And honestly, they may wanna come, because when I was growing up, again, I was in church every day. So if my friends wanted to spend the night, they would ask, well, what day is it, Tori? Because my mama said, anybody that spend the night over here,
Going
you're
to
going
church in the morning.
So, and then my friends, like, they just thought my family was a bomb, and I'm just like, why y'all want to go to church?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's just like, when some of those kids, they may just be jealous because your family seems a little bit more structured and intact. Kids seek structure. So they may be making fun of you, but deep down, invite those kids, like, you want to come with me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then sometimes they may wind up having more fun depending on what church it is, because some ain't as fun as others, right? They don't have those programs that she was referring to, but that's why we're having this conversation, right? Because some is just like, they in church with the grown folks. They just sitting there, mama telling you don't fall asleep, don't slouch. It's just like, well, what am I supposed to be doing in here?
Right.
Right? So, but if you do have those programs, those 13-year-old kids may want to join in and come with, bring some of these kids, because they don't have adults in their life that's looking out for them, right? So your friend's son who ain't never been to church, come to church with me. Come to church on Wednesday night. Come to church on Friday night. You know what I mean? Do those things, and that might stop some of that.
Right.
Can I say something that's a little bit controversial, Pastor Razor? I don't want to blow up the internet or anything.
Okay, here we go. Let's go for it.
But I think the word bullying is overused. And I'm a parent, I'm an educator. My child comes from a home where he was teased. It made him stronger. I think when you, I don't want anybody to hurt my child, but I know I have to prepare him for the streets and school. He's gonna encounter people that don't love him. So I cannot let you be a crybaby and your feelings always, and the only way you learn, and Pastor Razor teased me growing up. And you need that cultivates you, it builds character. It's okay if you fall, somebody tease you. And I would tell my son, you gotta get a better joke than your auntie. You don't want everybody laughing at you. And that helps when you're encountering people because you're a deacon at church. And my son got quick comebacks because he grew up in a household in the church that we allowed that in a safe way, okay? For you internet people who are, about bullying.
Listen, I told somebody, I was like, you can't talk about me because the family I grew up in, I got thick skin over here. Like, you can't say nothing about me because I ain't heard it all. It doesn't bother you. Right? So when you're cloaked in the armor of God as well, on top of that, it's just like nothing can touch you at this point. You know what I mean? Like, whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever you got for me, it doesn't move me. I am secure in who I am and what I bring. So, to your point, like, I don't know how that fit, but I get where you're going.
It's okay. Teasing is okay sometimes.
Okay.
We got one more.
I just wanted to, piggyback off the point we was talking about. I never felt like I was influenced. Like Clarice said, I more felt like I was the influencer. Because all my friends know if you coming over to spend the night, just have your church clothes ready for Sunday morning, because my mama not missing it, I'm not missing it. We ain't staying here. We going to church and we gonna sit there and listen to Pastor preach. It didn't matter. Even around my friends, can count on my hands and my toes how many events I've missed to come to church. And I might have been mad looking back at it, but I kind of thank my mama now for that. It kind of sounds bitter saying it, but I kind of thank her for that, because it was a lot of times I'm like, oh yeah, I can't go to that because I'm going to this church event. Then when I got to the church event, I'm like, oh hey, I kind of like coming to this church event tonight. And I would always have a friend with me, and that friend would go back like, hey, I kind of like this. So it was, I never felt like I was influenced, but I can kind of see where kids can be influenced now in this society.
Yeah. You had another question?
She got a question.
I'm a